Shastra Vicharanaika Nipuno Saddharma Samstapako Lokanam Hitakarino Tribhuvanye Manyo Saranya Karo Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nande Namataliko Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghu Yugo Shri Jiva Gopalako Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghu Yugo Shri Jiva Gopalako. One moment. And the translation for the six Goswamis, so this nice invocation verse for them. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the six Goswamis, namely Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus they are honored all over the three worlds and the worth taking shelter of, because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. Shri Rupa Goswami Pranam. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jana Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. In the translation, when will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who was established within this material world, the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? So everyone can repeat, say it with me, the invocation for the scriptures. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are continuing with the Nectar of Instruction. Sri Upadeshamrita is given by Sri Rupa Goswami and translated by Srila Prabhupada as the Nectar of Instruction. And we are going to begin with text number 8 today. So you can say the verse with me together. Tanna marupa charitadi sukirtananu smityo kramena rasana manasi niyogya tishtan vraje tad anuragi jananugami kalam nayed akilam iti upadesha saram. And the translation and the purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Brhat Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. The essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Vraja, Goloka Vrindavan Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. And I'm going to read paragraph 1 in the purport and part of paragraph 2. Since the mind may be one's enemy or one's friend, one has to train the mind to become his friend. The Krishna consciousness movement is especially meant for training the mind to be always engaged in Krishna's business. The mind contains hundreds and thousands of impressions. The mind contains hundreds and thousands of impressions, not only of this life, but also of many, many lives of the past. These impressions sometimes come in contact with one another and produce contradictory pictures. In this way, the mind's function can become dangerous for a conditioned soul. Students of psychology are aware of the mind's various psychological changes. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, text 6, it is said, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajati ante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kuntaya sadatat bhava bhavitaha. Quote, whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. Unquote. At the time of death, the mind and intelligence of a living entity create the subtle form of a particular type of body for the next life. If the mind suddenly thinks of something not very congenial, one has to take a corresponding birth in the next life. On the other hand, if one can think of Krishna at the time of death, he can be transferred to the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan. This process of transmigration is very subtle. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami advises devotees to train their minds in order that they will be able to remember Krishna, able to remember. Let me read that again. Sorry. This process of transmigration is very subtle. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami advises devotees to train their mind in order that they will be unable to remember anything other than Krishna. Similarly, the tongue should be trained to speak only of Krishna and to taste only Krishna prasad. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shrivasadi, Gaura Bhakti Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We have come quite a way into the nectar of instruction, where we have discussed text 1 to 7 in the past several days. And in text number 7, it was discussed how to completely cure oneself from avidya, or the jaundice of ignorance, including offenses and material desires, and to begin to taste the sweetness of the holy name. So here in text number 8, Srila Prabhupada begins the paragraph in the purport in relation to training the mind. And I'm going to just paraphrase this paragraphs 1 and 2, which I just read for you, partly of paragraph 2, which is included. So the mind is a sort of storage area and a repository for all the samskaras or impressions that have been accumulated not only within this one particular life, but it has been accumulated for many, many lifetimes, including in the past. And this may explain sometimes why one thinks of things or items or any other persons even that may one have no experience with in this particular lifetime. You know, an example is that somebody may remember somebody, but they know they have no connection of that person in this particular life. Where is it coming from? Or somebody may have some, you could say, a phobia for fire or water or for heights. And this can be attributed maybe to some sense of maybe even traumatic experience with fire or water, even in the past life, if not in the present life. So the mind, because the subtle body travels when the soul leaves the gross body, with the subtle body, which includes the mind, into the next body. And at the time of conception, with the mother and father, hopefully the mother and father, not otherwise, in that sense, in the cultured life. So therefore, one has to, with the help of the process and different processes in terms of practicing in Krishna consciousness, one has to sort of train the mind in a way that it will be able to think especially of Krishna or Krishna-related activities or Krishna's devotees at the time of leaving this body. And Srila Prabhupada just says in that purport, just begins with the tongue, the first verse, Vacha Vega. It's like the tongue is used to vibrate. And in the first verse, Jiva Vegam, and it's used to taste. So Prabhupada nicely says in this purport that it begins with engaging the tongue in chanting, by hearing the chanting also, especially japa, and to taste prasadam, and to engage oneself, which includes the mind, in hearing about Krishna's name, form, and qualities and pastimes, which means it's Krishna's activities. So we're going to move on to text number 8, and I'm going to put on slide number 77 onto the screen with Krishna Prema Pradyaka Prabhu's help. So from this particular text, we are discussing Raganuga Bhakti into Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti right up to text 8, 9, 10, and 11. In other words, from text 1 to 7, it was discussing um, Vaidhi Bhakti or Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So now we're entering into Raganuga Bhakti, specifically here in text number 8, and 9, 10, and 11 will take us into Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti. So these are terms that are used, but it may be used in the sense of like, elevated features in one's consciousness, in Krishna consciousness. See? So I just gave the simplest definition based on definitions from Chaitanya Chaitamrita in this particular slide. So Raganuga Bhakti. So the word Raga, if you take it on its own in the first heading there, Raga means to be deeply attached. In other words, nothing can shake such an attachment, even if there's challenges or difficulties or problems as one is going, nothing can shake that. That's called rag. And anuga means to follow. So raganuga means a person who follows in the footsteps of somebody else. But raganuga bhakti means it's given this spontaneous devotional service, which is rag in terms of, it's a natural in terms of being natural in devotional service. Spontaneous devotional in which the devotee follows, anuga, the word anuga, follows in the footsteps of one of the eternal associates of Krishna in Vrindavan. So the examples of eternal associates is like Madhya Soda, Sridham, Subal, Stoka Krishna, like the cowherd boys, Nanda Maharaj, Krishna's father, or one of the gopis, including Srimati Radharani. So we're talking about within this particular world, in this particular body, which is completely spiritualized in terms of utilizing one's every moment in Krishna consciousness, one becomes spontaneous. And then one is internally, naturally attracted to one of those eternal associates of Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. And when that happens, then one is entering in the beginning stages of Bhava Bhakti. And Bhava means ecstasy, and Bhakti means devotional service. So devotional service and ecstasy is like the preliminary stage of the sun of Krishna Prema, which we discussed in a previous slide some days ago or even yesterday. So Bhava Bhakti means devotional service and ecstasy, which means Bhava, or preliminary stage of love for Krishna. And then Prema Bhakti means the complete mature stage of pure love for Krishna, which includes Radha Krishna, Srimati Radharani. So I just thought of keeping the slide for you and then explaining it in that way. Now you can put me back onto the screen. Now Srila Prabhupada gives some nice examples of how when we practice Krishna consciousness, then the practice makes perfect even in spiritual life. So the practice in Krishna consciousness is called devotional service and practice, which is the meaning of called sadhana bhakti. See? And when the practice becomes more like natural, it's called raganuga bhakti, which is this particular verse. So Prabhupada used to give an example of a child going to school. And the child initially may not feel like going to school, but by the prompting of the parents, which is like the spiritual master of the child, they may even transcendentally, like bribe the child. Look, if you go to school today, when you come back, I'll make your favorite, like pizza or lasagna or whatever. And then the child goes to school. Okay? So the parents incites in the child some what is called a voluntary force. So the child, okay, eventually voluntary forces oneself to go to school. So this is called Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So as the child goes to school and becomes like more knowledgeable, and the child wants to become like a scholar in a particular field of knowledge, and even attain what is called like a PhD, like a sort of a specialist in a particular field of knowledge. But the child is not forced at that time. The child has a natural desire to become a scholar in a particular field of knowledge. So that is called raganuga. In other words, one naturally looks forward to studying and analyzing and doing some research papers and so forth. So Prabhupada gives an example. Then I'll put on the slide in slide 78 from Vaidhi Bhakti to Raganuga Bhakti. Beautiful examples. This is Prabhupada's very own analogies. Prabhupada gives this. One has to learn to use the typewriter by following the regulative principles of the typing book. One has to place his fingers on the keys in such a way and practice, and when one becomes adept, he can type swiftly and correctly without even looking at the keys. Similarly, one has to follow the rules and regulations of devotional service as they are set down by the spiritual master, which is Vaidhi Bhakti, Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. Then one can come to the point of spontaneous loving devotional service. That is Raganuga Bhakti. This love is already there within the heart of everyone. This is the Krishna Prema. Spontaneous service is not artificial. So you can put me back onto the screen. So I have described this and mentioned in our discussions in great detail in my Nectar of Devotion classes, like just over a month or more ago, online also. So if you want to hear those tapes, there's 25 sessions of those tapes, part 1 to part 25. It's on the YouTube also. Or you may get the links from Krishna Prema Pradayaka, who's organizing in this Zoom conference in terms of the classes I'm giving. But I'll briefly explain some examples which everyone can relate to. For example, in Vaidhi in Sadhana Bhakti, it is given in Nectar of Devotion that one should rise early in the morning and attend Mangala Arati. Now, the same activity, if it is naturally performed in terms of you look forward to going to Mangala Arati, that means that's Raganuga. There's some spontaneous. It's the same activity. One is applying voluntary force initially to attend Mangala Arati, but now one is looking forward to it. So that's called Raganuga. One has some attachment for the morning program. So in a similar way, when we discussed the holy names yesterday, in terms of chanting the holy names in Nam Aparat, Nam Abhas, and Sudanam, and we had the constant so-called instructional mantra from Prabhupada yesterday when we discussed, go on chanting, go on chanting, go on chanting. So in the initial stage, one may be chanting, the Hare Krishna Maha mantra in japa, and one feels that 16 rounds of japa is enough. But when one comes to the stage of becoming attached to chanting, then one will feel the 16 rounds is not enough. In other words, I want to chant more. Naturally, one looks forward to 16 rounds is not enough. So that's called the stage of Raganuga Bhakti. And when one feels some, you could say, pleasure in relation to chant and be happy, and that is called ecstasy, that is called Bhava Bhakti. And then naturally Prema Bhakti will flow thereafter. So I'm just giving the different stages of just chanting japa. So I'll repeat. To apply one's voluntary force and being dutiful in chanting japa is called sadhana bhakti, devotional service and practice. Raganuga bhakti means that whereas devotional service and practice means that 16 rounds of japa is enough. Raganuga bhakti means that 16 rounds for me is not enough. I want to chant 17 rounds, 18 rounds, 19 rounds, 20 rounds. See? And when one chants more and more, you could say as a flow, then one will be coming to the point of chanting and being happy. And happy indicates some ecstasy, and that's called Bhava Bhakti. Bhava Bhakti. Now, within Prema Bhakti, which may not even necessarily happen in this particular body, but maybe when one leaves one's body, because talking about the mind and leaving the body in the beginning paragraphs, it's like at the stage of actually joining and entering into Krishna's pastimes at the time of leaving the body in Prema Bhakti, one feels this chanting or the association of Radha and Krishna in the form of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is my very food, is my very life, is my very existence. I cannot do without this. So that's a very internally elevated consciousness, which is not sort of, you could say, seen or exposed by some other devotee. One cannot identify that kind of internal state of consciousness at the time of before leaving this body. So these are simple ways to come to the point of the different stages of sadhana bhakti, practice, into raganuga bhakti, spontaneity, into bhava bhakti, ecstasy, and into prema bhakti when one gives this last body not to take another material body again, but is reinstated in one's natural spiritual position. All right, now in order to attain such a state, we will get to slide 79, and Srila Prabhupada quotes Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in paragraph 4 of the purport. It's beautifully given by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, quoted by Srila Prabhupada in this nice purport of text number 8. So I have headed it up, the sum and substance of all instruction. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has commented as follows upon this verse. One who has not yet developed interest in Krishna consciousness should give up all material motives and train his mind by following the progressive regulative principles, namely chanting and remembering Krishna and his name, form, quality, pastimes, and so forth. So that part is called sadhana bhakti. And to give up all material motives and just chant and remember Krishna's name, form, quality, and pastimes. It's called sadhana bhakti. It's an elevated feature of that. Then I'm reading on. In this way, after developing a taste for such things, one should try to live in Vrindavan and pass his time constantly remembering Krishna's name, fame, pastimes, and qualities under the direction and protection of an expert devotee. That is called Raganuga Bhakti, which is this particular text. This is the sum and substance of all instruction regarding the cultivation of devotional service. So now, how does one go about doing this? Now, in essence, it could be quite theoretical for, at least for me, in that sense. I'm not sure of others. They may be beyond that stage. Yeah. So how does one do that? And we're going to refer to paragraph 2 from where I stopped, but you don't have to, where I stopped in paragraph 2. So I'm just reading basically further on from that sort of paragraph. It says, Srila Rupa Goswami further advises, Tistan Vrajay, that one should live in Vrindavan or any other part of Vrajabhumi. And in that way, when one makes Vrindavan one's residence practically, one should take shelter of an advanced devotee who one recognizes based on faith and relationship. You cannot just pick anybody, because that resident of Vrindavan that stays there, that resident of Vrindavan, you know by receiving instructions and by associating with the person over time. And then one develops one's faith, and then one deepens one's faith in that person, that this person is very Krishna conscious. See? And then Srila Prabhupada quotes Rupa Goswami and says, in this way, under the direction of that type of exalted devotee who is called a Raganuga Vaishnava, one should always remember Krishna and his pastimes. So there's a sort of guidance given for this, that one receives some guidance in that sense also. Now, at the same time, Srila Prabhupada speaks about how one comes to the point of this spontaneous love. One comes to this point of spontaneous love. It's a little bit, I'm not sure how to explain it in the simplest way, but I'll try my best. Like that. I'm trying to think of an example. Remember like an example. All right. I won't take any example for that matter in terms of name. Okay. You know, you have like a father, see? And in a cultured family, usually the fathers, they're attached to all the children and take care of all the children. But usually the father has a closer affinity towards the daughter. And if he doesn't have a daughter, then he may have a closer affinity towards the daughter-in-law. You know, in that sense. But the father has experience with, in terms of growing up, you know, the growth of the daughter in her formative years as a child into like teenagehood and into adulthood. So eventually the father understands that the daughter needs to be married. And when she's married and she goes to the home of her in-laws, then the father feels great separation. Especially the father, he feels great separation from the daughter. And at times, you know, it takes him a while to get used to that, you know, that my daughter is no more at home. But because they were staying together, which is called sambhog, in other words, they were together in person. But the father is more with the daughter when she goes to the in-laws place. When she goes to the in-laws place. So in order for the daughter to be in the father's consciousness, when she becomes a mother, and when the grandchildren are a little grown up, the father always requests, you know, just send the grandchildren over to me. See, the grandchild. So when the grandchild is with with the grandfather now, then it reminds the father of associating, you know, with the daughter when she was at home. You know, it's like that. I'm trying to explain it as simple as possible relative to our experience in the material world. You know, like that. So when one comes to Raganuga Bhakti, you know, spontaneous attraction for service, for devotional service, like that. It's a very elevated consciousness in Krishna consciousness, quite advanced actually. And in that consciousness also one feels separation, you know, from Radha and Krishna and from the associates of the Lord. But that feeling of separation, it kind of excels. It's a little bit deeper in terms of being actually personally with them, in meeting Radha and Krishna. It's a little bit more. Just as the father, he feels more the presence of the daughter when she's gone to the in-laws' place after marriage. She's more with him in separation than actually being with him at home. See? So I thought of, the example is crude because in this example, the father has experience of growing up the daughter, educating her, taking care of her, training her up through the mother, and so forth. Whereas in this sense, in this world, we may have forgotten that experience that we were with Radha and Krishna. See? So therefore, the separation of feelings of separation from Radha and Krishna is not actually, you could say in one sense, with us now, based on being with Radha and Krishna, which we have forgotten, initially. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. So for us, for us, it's a bit different from like the feelings of separation of Mother Yasoda, when Krishna leaves Vrindavan and goes to Mathura Dwarka, or the feelings of separation of the gopis when Krishna leaves Vrindavan and goes to sort out Kamsa. In that sense, in Mathura. See, we know about all these pastimes of the Lord by reading them and absorbing them in Srimad Bhagavatam and in the Krishna book. We know these things. So my sort of presentation of this right now is that the feelings of separation are sort of exclusively for the eternal associates of the Lord in Goloka Vrindavan, like the gopis, the cowherd boys, and the elder gopis and the elder cowherd men, and Mother Yasoda and Nanda Maharaj, because they already have this association of Krishna, just like the father already has association of the daughter. So when Krishna leaves the so-called, you could say, personal association, then they feel him more personally in separation from Krishna, just as the father will feel more personal association of the daughter in separation from the daughter. See? So that analogy fits more in relation to the eternal associates of the Lord, where they have feelings of separation from Krishna. Whereas for us, it's maybe a little bit different in terms of the eternal associates are called Ragatmika devotees. They're not Raganuga. Whereas for us in Raganuga, the best way to consider this is that we do not feel separation. We serve in separation, which is a little different. We serve in separation. In other words, a Raganuga for us means that, the person may not be with us, and we have experience with that person. But because the person is not with us, we remember the person's instructions, we remember the person's association, and then we serve that person in separation. See? So, but it's a bit, it's a little bit different even for us because, it's like if you take His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Brhat Swami, Srila Prabhupada, it's such a unique situation for all of us, apart from those devotees who are direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada and may have associated with him in one form or that, even very little association, some of the disciples of Prabhupada they just saw him when he came. They didn't even speak to him apart from taking their vows at the time of initiation. Your name is one of the, that's the only words that he spoke to them. But Srila Prabhupada's uniqueness, it's quite a thing. Srila Prabhupada's uniqueness, because even for us, I joined, after Srila Prabhupada left the planet, over 36 years ago in the early 80s. Yeah. So even for us, it's like we feel we can personally associate with Srila Prabhupada. Yes or no? And the answer will be an emphatic yes. I feel that. At least I feel that, in many ways, through his tapes, through his books, through his lectures, through association with disciples of Srila Prabhupada, through the chanting of the holy names, through honoring prasadam, through festivals, and I can see Srila Prabhupada in Guru Puja, and Prabhupada, taking darshan of the deities. He's on the altar with them, and so forth. So it's quite a unique thing in relation to Srila Prabhupada. Very, very, very unique. We may not have been with him personally, but we can feel separation from him. And in separation, with that feeling means that we have to act on that. And the acting for us is to serve in separation, not just, brood over, I miss Prabhupada so much and do nothing. Not like that. So we can serve in separation. So in a similar way, coming back to the same analogy of the father in relation to the daughter, or the mother, in fact, in relation to a son, in the same way. See, coming back to that is the sense of like you may also have association with devotees even in the current life, say with one's initiating guru that may not be easily available to serve personally, but you have experience, you have realization, and you have feelings for one's initiating guru, or for you have feelings and reservation, in feelings, you have feelings also with other devotees that you may have been serving, who are still with us, but not easily accessible and available for personal association. Shiksha gurus and even other devotees, your friends that you served with in, say, in Kuala Lumpur or in Mumbai or in Toronto. But now that you're not with them, but they're still there, you moved on to another place because of work or because of getting married or family and so forth. But you can serve them in separation by remembering the instructions and remembering the Krishna conscious times you'll had together and so forth. So that is called also Raganuga, that you're attracted to remembering those times that you were together with devotees positively, in different services in Krishna consciousness. So bearing this in our consciousness now, I'm just speaking freely, basically. Bearing this in our consciousness, Srila Prabhupada has given us, it is easy to understand Srila Prabhupada or even Srila Prabhupada's associates, his disciples and so forth, and grand disciples. It's easy to understand that they could be also the persons to follow if you're residing in Vrindavan as a Raganuga Vaishnava and you want to come to that point of Raganuga Bhakti, spontaneous attachment to somebody who's spontaneously attached to one of the eternal associates of Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. However, we don't have to go very far, not very far, to even look for that. Srila Prabhupada, amazingly enough, he knew that he has to fast track all of us practically into Raganuga Bhakti. He has to fast track us. And before I continue, there's some background sound about some dogs barking outside a little away. Can you hear that? But is it like distracting us?
Yes, Maharaj, slightly.
But not too much.
Not too much because we can hear your voice like louder than that.
But I'm in a farm area, so some of our closer neighbors, they're not regular devotees, but they're favorable. And one new home has just been built here in the past year, so he has some home dogs, and they're nice. They like devotees. They don't bark at devotees when you go on the walk into the field. They're nice. Yeah. in that sense. And they also roam freely, in the temple area, because we have about a couple of acres of land here. It's a farm temple. It's called ISKCON Vedic Farm, Krishna Balaram Mandir. But I'm getting a slight distraction from them myself, but I'm trying to focus on this thing. I guess the dogs heard us now, so they settle silent. I mean, they're part of Krishna, part and parcel of Krishna. They may have that body, but that barking can be attributed to sometimes crying for association in a sense. All right, so we'll continue. So here, Srila Prabhupada's ingenuity, he knew that Srila Prabhupada has a special disposition from Krishna. Srila Prabhupada has special potency that's not regular potency of even regular preachers in the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So he knew that he has to fast track us. Srila Prabhupada knew that within our practices of Krishna consciousness, that we may not be also easily attracted to continually chanting even, more than 16 rounds of japa. We may just like, okay, I'm finished my 16 rounds, I'm going to do other things. He knew that, Prabhupada knew that. But it is a special, causeless mercy. In other words, causeless means there's no adhikar, there's no eligibility in us for this thing, for Raganuga Bhakti. Personally, I don't have any qualification for that. But Srila Prabhupada has made us qualified in another way. Although we're not, personally, I'm not qualified for this. So we'll put slide number 80 and I'll tell you how Prabhupada has brought us to that point. Although we are not eligible, although I'm not eligible for it. Now just look at this. All of you know this prayer. Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namaha. Like in the translation there. O Tulasi, beloved of Krishna, I bow down before you again and again. That's the translation of the words I just said. Then Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Hey Abhilasi. My desire is to obtain the service of Sri Radha and Krishna. Now you know what we're speaking about? So this Tulasi Arati is extremely important in our sadhana in the morning. But it's actually Raganuga. It's not even sadhana. When we even sing these prayers. Of course, we should not sing it as a matter of tune or it's a nice, sounding nice and so forth. We should sing it from our hearts that, this is what I want eventually. Yeah, what I want eventually. So in red on the top, spontaneous devotional service in which the Raganuga devotee follows in the footsteps of one of the eternal associates of Krishna in Vrindavan like Vrindadevi. Vrindadevi is Tulasi. And just such a beautiful translation of this prayer that we sing every morning. O Tulasi, beloved of Krishna, I bow before you again and again. Prabhupada said you can directly pray to her. My desire is to obtain the service of Sri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you as his wishes fulfill, bestowing your mercy upon him or her, you make him or her a resident of Vrindavan. That is Tistan Vraje, live in Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence in the pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Pleasure grows. Nikunja Yuno Ratikeli said hi. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower, Anuga, Rag Anuga, make me a follower of the coward damsels of Raja, the gopis. That means, Radharani, Lalita, Vishaka, Rupa, Manjari, Rati, Manjari, like that. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays, may I always swim in the love of Sri Radha and Govinda. Very elevated. very elevated. So even if we don't know that during Tulsi Aarti and then watering Tulsi and circumambulating her, that she's non different from Vrinda Devi Gopi, you know. And Vrinda Devi has two parents, Sukha and Sari, male and female. And she takes messages to the gopis to meet Krishna. So we can be assisting Vrinda Devi to assist the gopis to meet Krishna. This whole prayer is that. It's called Raganuga Bhakti, that we are Anuga following with our deep attachment for Vrinda Devi. So it's not something that's we can take very lightly in our sadhana in the morning. It's actually Raganuga Bhakti. Prabhupada has given us that. By his causeless mercy. Causeless means I am not eligible for this. There's no reason that you have to tell me to do this. There's no qualification and all that I have, but still you're giving this. It's causeless in that sense. So that's Srila Prabhupada. That's Srila Prabhupada. Of course, there's more things to say about Srila Prabhupada, which I'll discuss towards the end today. But for now, oh, it is nice to see Jason with us from, and I think he's in New Brunswick or something now, but he used to be in Toronto, and Nicole. He has joined us. Jason, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay. So yesterday there was some pending questions from two devotees, and that is Sita Thakurani and
Wing Chong Prabhu.
Devidasi and Fung Wen Chong. So we could begin with them. So Sita, you had a remaining question from yesterday. We could take it now, and still we may continue to take questions in the next half an hour or so. You know, if you have questions and comments, you can say now.
I had a question yesterday. I think it's answered today. That I was thinking, I chant 16 rounds, and after that, I have so many other things to do, so I can't chant more than 16 rounds. But now I understand that that's a level that I feel I will be committing offense by chanting, because chanting 16 rounds is concentrating on the mind is a big struggle all the time.
So what's your question?
I don't chant more than 16 rounds thinking that I will be committing offense to the holy name, because I cannot fully focus on the holy name after 16 rounds.
All right, you're repeating the same thing, but I need to know what's your question. Or if the question has been answered, tell me it's answered and how it's been answered. I need to know that.
Yesterday's topic was go on chanting. And my mind, like, I don't chant after 16 rounds. I'm not being able to chant.
Thakurani, you're saying the same thing. I need to know how does this answer your question today, or if it's still a question.
No, in today's class, I understood that in the Vedic Bhakti, we are still chanting 16 rounds. It has to come naturally. I don't have to force myself.
All right. So put me back onto the screen. Just to discuss a little bit more on Sita Thakurani's inquiry and conclusion of her own conclusion, I would say like this, that somehow or the other, by some causeless mercy of Srila Prabhupada, or by one's causeless mercy of one's Diksha Guru and Shiksha Gurus, initiating, instructing spiritual masters, we should come to the point of feeling that 16 rounds is not enough. So that kind of attachment for the holy name should be there. So one cannot, I repeat, one cannot restrict oneself and feel that 16 rounds is enough. One should come to the point of applying voluntary force. Okay, let me do 17 rounds today. Now one can do that, and one cannot give the excuse that I have so many other things to do and then 16 rounds is enough. That's a lame, trivial excuse. I'm being very firm on this. Okay. Why? Because maybe in the formative stages of being parents, one may not have enough time because the children are little babies and they're growing up now and so forth. But as the children grow up and your role is becoming more and more mature as a mother, no more as a wife, then the children are grown up and they have their own responsibilities. And naturally, you'll have more time. You should, as a mother, one has to spend a lot of time with growing children, from babies to children to teenagers. That's fine. But as soon as they are grown up, one should not repeat the cycle of just spending so much more time even with the grandchildren. One should spend time with the grandchildren, but the grandchildren also with their parents, your children, who are adults now. So don't feel now that, that my children who are now parents, and I'm a grandmother or a grandfather, so now is my time now to spend more time with my grandchildren, just as I spend more time in the growing years of my children. No, one should come to the Vanaprastha stage, from Grihastha to Vanaprastha. And in Vanaprastha means retired household life. One should spend time with one's grandchildren, that's fine. But not excessively that you become unpaid nannies for the sense gratification of your daughter and son-in-law, or your son and daughter-in-law, to go and do some other activities of sense gratification in the material world while you are taking care of the children at home and you're happy doing that and they're engaging in other activities. That is not right. See? So therefore, it's very, very important for all of us in principle is to increase our association with Radha and Krishna. And that's direct. That's not jumping over. That's direct association of Srila Prabhupada's instructions and association of the instruction of the disciplic succession. That 16 rounds should not be enough for all of us. Now, having said that, it may be easy for me to say that because, I jumped right from brahmachari ashram to sannyas ashram. That's true. It's easy for me to say that. But at the same time, you should make it easy on yourself. It's not just, there are ashrams, from brahmachari to grihastha, which most of you are in, and to vanaprastha. One should take the vanaprastha ashram seriously and engage in more hearing and chanting and spiritual activities. And one should not give the reasoning that, that I as a father now in retired household life, or even as a grandfather, but my wife, who's a grandmother also, is not so much interested in this, vanaprastha ashram now. That's all right. That's all right. You can continue even as a grandmother, as a grandfather on your own, even if the other party is not so interested. But you're not in the way of still spending time with your grandchildren whenever the need arises. But not just becoming an unpaid, nana or nanny or whatever you call that, for the sense gratification of your own grown-up children who are parents now and taking care of them. That's quite common, actually. So we should be careful for that and really, really, really enter into the spirit of the Varna Ashram Dharma in terms of Vanaprastha Ashram, retired household life. So having said that, we'll take the next question from Fung Wen Chang. Where are you?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, come on to the screen, Fung Wen Chang. I cannot see you now, and I cannot, okay, speak. Now you have to unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. Now speak.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
I
Hare
can hear
Krishna Maharaj.
you had a remaining question from yesterday, so please tell us the question now.
Yeah. It seems like now, since Srila Prabhupada has, because by his causeless mercy, this chanting, he blesses us with this.
Prabhupada, by his causeless mercy, through his associates also, through his
Yes.
disciples and grand disciples. Yes, go ahead.
And he gave us another guidance, another simple mantra to go on is to go on chanting. So it's really very merciful of this previous Acharya and Acharya now. According to that, because now we have two things we are doing usually in the center, in the ISKCON center, and we ourselves according is chanting and service to the devotee in the temple. So
Yes.
so I was quite mixed up in a sense that, okay, let's say our service, is it interacted with our chanting? Can our service also improve our chanting? Can the service of a devotee will enhance our chanting? And I think this is the key question about these two things together.
Good question, practical question. So put me onto the screen. All right. The chanting of japa especially is the foundation or basis that determines our consciousness in which we do other services in Krishna consciousness. Whether it's cooking, or whether it's serving the devotees, or whether it's cleaning the temple room, or whether it's organizing the Rath Yatra festival, or whether it's going on parikrama, or any other practical service we do. So if one nicely chants one's 16 rounds of japa as the priority for the day without neglect of one's duties at home and being irresponsible, that should not be there. Sometimes you have to do one thing first and then do the chanting later on, the japa. That may be there because of timeousness in the morning, especially taking care of the children or the husband or the father before they get to work, or the wife has to do something for the deities before she starts chanting around in front of the deities. That's all right. However, we should be cognizant, we should always be aware in our hearts that when we chant minimum 16 rounds of japa, that helps us to render our other services with bhakti or devotion. Any other service, whether it's cooking, whether it's cleaning, or whether it's serving other devotees, and so forth. So that is why the minimum of chanting of 16 rounds of japa is the prime vow that we take. Before initiation, we have taken that vow to come to the point of chanting during initiation and even after initiation. So it's in all three stages. It's not necessarily only at the time of initiation. So your bhakti begins on the platform of chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra Japa. Now, having said that, in order for new people to come into Krishna consciousness, they may not be immediately chanting 16 rounds. But the essence of our preaching in the long term is that as best as possible, as Srila Prabhupada said in many excerpts in the purports, also in Nectar of Devotion, in Nectar of Instruction here rather, that the Krishna consciousness movement is meant to actually bring people to the point of chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And to bring them to the point eventually to slowly, but not like prematurely if they don't want to do it, but just to keep connection with them. That if you bring them to the point of chanting at least one round of japa on beads, that's their start within sadhana bhakti. Otherwise, they may be favorable to us, that's fine. But gradually, when they begin with one round of chanting, over time, one can offer your association and bring them to the point of 16 rounds, which will actually enter them into the, you could say, beginning stages of the beginning level of pure devotional service to do other services. So I'll give another example in this regard. Sometimes even new people, they may like to do practical services and they may not be inclined to chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra Japa. That also may be there. So we should leave it open to them. For example, in some places where I've served, I engage people were sort of, you know, they sort of liked me for some reason or the other. And, and they say, look, can I come and visit you at the temple? I said, fine. They're not practicing devotees yet. So when they see that, that when I take them around and I show them, like, see all these persons, they are engaged in some seva, to do some seva, like service, not devotional service, but seva, service. So when they see somebody is like cleaning vegetables for the Sunday feast, so they say, oh, I like to do that. So I said, okay, come, I'll introduce you to them. And then they clean vegetables. So that is engaging them in service to come in the beginning stages to devotional service. See? So it's not necessary that we can emphasize to new people to chant japa. We can only emphasize to them when they become, you could say, having some faith and having some relationship with the devotees to hear more about Krishna consciousness and to hear more, that they now want to follow the instructions of the disciplic succession and follow the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. At that time, slowly we could come to bring the point of the 16 rounds. So I'm giving this differentiation to your question because the actual answer to your question is that you may be a practicing devotee now and it only applies to you, but not those type of persons who are beginning to come into the association of devotees and have beginning stages of faith, or favorable for that matter, just to do practical service, not even chant the holy name. But in order to come again and again into the association of devotees and practice Krishna consciousness, wherever there's a little bit of an opportunity to ask them to chant japa, for example, you can let them know that, today is Janmashtami. So they may ask, so what special thing I can do to be closer to Krishna? Today is Janmashtami. They said that, then you can tell them, then you take these beads and you just chant here for half an hour in front of the deities. It's a nice thing on Janmashtami. So you can introduce them like that to chanting japa. But however, for to answer your question, we are speaking to devotees like yourself who are already involved in practicing Krishna consciousness. So therefore, if you're already involved in chanting japa, that should be your staple and stable foundation for all other services to do in terms of the proper consciousness, which is called devotion. Feng Wang Chong, is that all right for now?
Yes, thank you, Maharaj. Very relatable.
You're welcome.
Very relishing, yeah.
Yes. Can we get other questions that people have, devotees have? No question is foolish and no question is simple. Every question is important. So you can bring somebody else onto the screen who has a question or a comment.
Maharaj, I have a question. When someone asked me this that I couldn't reply, so I thought of asking Maharaj.
Good. Ask the question. Come onto the screen. We'd like to see it.
Okay, Hare Krishna Maharaj. So this is a question from one of my friends who was asking like during like Gita reading session. So he said that Lord Krishna is complete himself and he has best of servants like Mother Yashoda and Srimati Radharani. So what is the value of my service unto him? I'm totally worthless, full of anarthas and four defects.
Nice question. I can give two answers to your question. The one answer is that Krishna feels incomplete. Krishna feels complete if all of his children, that means all of us also included, is parts and parcels, He feels complete if we are with Krishna and Srimati Radharani running service eternally in Goloka Vrindavan. So when Krishna is at times with his eternal associates, even like Radharani or Mother Yasoda or other one of the cowherd boys or other gopis or the elders of Vrindavan. So sometimes, Krishna may forget he's with them because he's worried. He's in anxiety. He's in depression. He's in stress. So therefore he comes as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That all of you have left me. And I cannot live without you because you are, you give me pleasure in devotional service. Now, why have you left that for your own pleasure to give me pleasure and take this other so-called pleasure and you're suffering in the material world? So Krishna is called Purnam, Om Purnam Adat Purnamidam. He's complete. That is clear. But Krishna is called Purnam Purnam, completely complete in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who misses those devotees who have left the service for their own independent misuse of their own independence and are suffering in the material world. So Krishna feels incomplete, that my son or daughter has gone, left home. I'm incomplete. And he hankers for all of us to come more than we hanker to be with them, with Radha and Krishna. So that's one answer. Srila Prabhupada was in some temple, and usually, we put the deities to rest after the Raj Bhoga Arati. That means the midday Arati, and around 1 o'clock or after that, and the Pujari puts the deities to rest, and then they are coming for the next Sayana Arati, at around 4 o'clock or so, the next Arati. So Radha and Krishna, or Jagannath, Baladeva, Subhadra, and Gaur Nitai, we are putting him to rest. The Pujari is putting him to rest in order to, give time to themselves on the altar because they have their pastimes on the altar. See? So one time, Srila Prabhupada observed that one devotee, was chanting his japa and doing circumambulating the altar, while the deities are sort of resting. From our point of view, in Sadhana Bhakti, we put them to rest, but they may be also associating with each other at that time in the eternal way, in the eternal way. Yeah. See? But one devotee was chanting his japa around at that time in the afternoon, and probably was chanting extra japa, taking the time off to be there. So Srila Prabhupada kind of observed that, and Srila Prabhupada said that when the deities are resting, from our perspective, resting, or even if somebody is resting for that matter, one should not disturb them because they need to rest, Or if they're doing some other activity with the eternal associate, one should not disturb them. Srila Prabhupada said it's better to chant japa elsewhere when the deities are resting, because if you're chanting japa and the deities are knowing, he made such an elevated point. It's quite amazing, Srila Prabhupada. Because he's always in Goloka Vrindavan conscious. He said, if you chant around the altar when the deities are resting, and the doors are closed, and you're chanting around, and Krishna is feeling, oh, my devotee is calling me. I want to associate with him, but the doors are closed. How can I go? To this devotee who's chanting japa. See? And chanting japa means, please engage me in your devotional service. My dear Lord, Radha and Krishna, Lordships, please engage. So this devotee wants to serve me, but the door is closed. Krishna will feel like that. Prabhupada made that point. See? So it is like that. In other words, Krishna is with his eternal associates, and there's a sort of eternal time for that. And there's also a type of eternal time and place and circumstance that Krishna also wants to be with us, like we attend Mangalarti, we would Radha and Krishna, and so forth. See? But it's a little different when the deities are being dressed in the morning after Mangalarti. they are still with us because our devotees were the pujaris addressing them. See? Addressing them. So therefore, Prabhupada allowed us to chant japa in the temple room, and we can also psychoanalyze because the deities are not resting, they're not with themselves. The pujaris are there taking care of them, bathing them, that's where we get charanamrita, dressing them in a fresh new outfit for the day. But that's a little different when we chant japa at that time. So if you want to chant japa and the deities are resting, maybe you can sit in the temple room, but don't circumambulate, Krishna and me, I'm going around you, in that sense. You can sit a little away in the temple room and do that. So Prabhupada recommend. So Krishna is eager to be with us in that sense. That's the point. He's eager to be with us, but the doors are closed in that. So because Krishna will be more eager to be with us than to be with Srimati Radharani when the doors are closed, and if you are wanting to be with us, in the sense that Radharani will always be there for Krishna. But we are in the material world and we are struggling to get back to Krishna. So Krishna will give more attention to us because it's like a child or a son or a daughter that has left home and struggling to come back home. In other words, Krishna feels that. Is that okay, Krishna Prema Prabhu?
Yes, Maharaj. Wonderful, Maharaj.
Very personal. The whole Krishna consciousness is so personal. All right. Other questions or comments? We have about 5 minutes.
But there is 2 devotees raised their hand. One is Akansha Mataji first, then Manish Prabhu.
Okay, let's take Akanksha first, and if we have time, we can take Manish tomorrow, if we have time. Otherwise, we can.
Hi Krishna Maharaj. Dandavat
Okay.
Pranam.
Hare Krishna. Akanksha, can you take the microphone a little away from me because it's too loud for me? Yeah, now speak.
Now,
Speak.
is
No,
it okay now, Maharaj?
A little closer. Hold it in your hand, take it closer. But now speak.
Now is it fine? Now is it fine?
Go ahead. Tell me your question.
Please accept my humble obeisances, Maharaj. I was little skeptical of asking this question, but like just now you said that, no question is a stupid question. So I'm trying. Please forgive me if I'm asking something, or please correct me if I'm wrong over here.
Feel free. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Maharaj. So, Maharaj, what if someone is only chanting and has not read all the scriptures or is not that well-learned scholar, but he or she yet gets the aspirations of different leelas or pastimes of the Lord, even though the person is in a Kanishta Varg? So, is this aspiration of love from Lord? This aspiration of love from Lord is a concoction of mind, or is it's a mercy of bliss? Because qualification to feel the same is equally important.
Okay, nice question. The first thing is don't worry about being a neophyte. And the second thing is don't worry about any qualification, which you used in your last features of your question or query. The important thing is that we should understand what is Bhakti Siddhanta. Siddhanta means reading the scriptures, becoming learned in them, and so forth. That's what you mentioned earlier. But your question is, what if somebody is not able to actually read nicely and so forth? The Siddhanta, the end result of like absorbing oneself in the scriptures is to come to the point of Bhakti Siddhanta or Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti, devotion. Yeah. So therefore, devotion indicates that the end result of all of our activities, including studying the scriptures or not having the inclination to even study it, or maybe maybe not feeling so intelligent that I can understand the scriptures which you just said also, in that sense. Don't worry about that. The end result of everything is to chant the holy names for us, at least in this life, in this particular body. So if one is continuously chanting, even without reading or without understanding when one's reading, that is all right. That is not a problem, because one is actually coming to the point of the conclusion of the scriptures. The conclusion of scripture is to chant the holy name of the Lord. So that's okay, Akanksha, for now?
Yes, Maharaj. I just want to add a little point to this. I mean, I want to understand one more thing. So even if like you're experiencing or aspiring the love in the form of remembering the pastimes of the Lord, and so is it like is it the concoction of your mind, or like it is actually the mercy from the Lord which you're receiving?
Okay. You said that before, but I didn't fully follow you at that time. I'm sorry. So
No
let's
problem,
do it.
Maharaj.
The important point is that when one chants one minimum rounds of 16 rounds of japa, one should try to hear the holy name. So by hearing one's japa, then naturally, hearing the japa, that is shravanam, hearing, and kirtanam means when you chant, shravanam. By chanting, you should hear, and it goes into the heart. See? So when from within the heart, after chanting minimum 16 rounds, then from within the heart, the form and the qualities and the pastimes of the Lord will come, and it will also envelop the mind. But it's not that, that one should artificially, remember the pastimes while chanting in the mind. One should chant one's japa and hear. So by hearing one's japa, the holy names, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and when that enters the heart, then the heart will flood the entire body, both, words, mind, and body in relation to the pastimes of the Lord, the form, the qualities, and the person, the rupa, guna, and lila, the form, the qualities, and pastimes of the Lord. So the secret is actually to hear the holy name. And if one cannot hear the holy name and the mind is remembering pastimes of the Lord, that is called second best. It's okay. It's okay. That's not a problem. It's not an offense. But if one can hear the holy name and purify one's whole existence, then the mind will remember the pastimes even after chanting the holy names by hearing. That's the most important thing. So Srila Prabhupada said in one place at an initiation lecture in 1968, I believe, Srila Prabhupada says, thinking of Krishna while chanting is all right. His exact words. Then Srila Prabhupada continued this to this effect. But best thing is that each word I shall chant and simply hear. And then Srila Prabhupada completed that. And he said, that will be very much effective. See? So more important than thinking of the pastimes is the word called remembering the pastimes. So there are two words. Thinking means the function of the mind. Remembering the pastime means is the function of the heart. So that is called smarana. But it is not, Prabhupada says, thinking of Krishna's pastimes is all right. It is not a fault. It is not offensive. But more important is to hear, and then Prabhupada says that will be very much effective. Okay? So we have come to time. So Manisha's question we can begin with tomorrow. But I just want to conclude with some beautiful exchange with Srila Prabhupada and his disciples in relation to Prabhupada is actually the person we should follow in Goloka Vrindavan. Okay? So this happened in a room conversation on December 14th, 1970 in Indore. So Srila Prabhupada was in the association of his various disciples in this room conversation. And one of Srila Prabhupada's legendary disciples, her name is Mother Yamuna. So Mother Yamuna speaks, and Mother Yamuna says, Srila Prabhupada, in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, you had mentioned that a devotee in attachment will select one of the inhabitants or the eternal associates of Goloka Vrindavan and follow in the footsteps in order to be successful in one's devotional service. Then she asked the question to Srila Prabhupada. Does that mean that one of our spiritual masters is an eternal representative, in Goloka Vrindavan? Does that mean that? Now, if you hear the tape, it's a very exalted question from an exalted disciple, Mother Yamuna, to an exalted spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada asked, he may have not heard the question properly, but he asked, what is that? What is that? He asked like that. Then Yamuna sort of repeats, Mother Yamuna repeats, and she says, Srila Prabhupada, all the inhabitants of Vrajabhumi, of Vrindavan, are very dear to Krishna. Now, when a devotee in attachment, raga, and anuga means to follow, selects one of the inhabitants and follows in the footsteps in order to be successful. So Srila Prabhupada did not answer. Another devotee, took Mother Yamuna's consciousness properly because he understood what she was asking. And he is also a senior devotee, and Prabhupada later gave him sannyas. So we call him now, Revati Nandan Prabhu. He was also in the room. He's just told Srila Prabhupada directly because Mother Yamuna, she speaks in a different way to Srila Prabhupada, and Revati Nandan has a nature that is bold. With Srila Prabhupada. So Revati Nandan Prabhu, he said, but Srila Prabhupada, you said that you are always in Vrindavan. So aren't we following you as the eternal associate of Vrindavan? In Vrindavan, eternal associate. That's right? He's asking Prabhupada, that's right? Yeah. Srila Prabhupada answers in one simple word. Srila Prabhupada said, yes. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada ki, Nectar of Instruction ki, Shri Upadeshamrita ki, Nitai Go Premanande Hari Hari Bol.